Today, we're looking at a green ink from Papier Plume, Forest Green. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around to the part you're most interested in. Or, if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. You could also follow me on Instagram, and if you like fountain pen ink reviews, I would invite you to subscribe. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into a Lamy All-Star with a broad nib, wrote with it for a day, and then used it to take my notes for this video. In order to have a standardization in my writing samples, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper, although I do use more papers, and those will show up later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, and it came in a bottle like that. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and really no shading. I know it's got that light spot. I got a feeling I touched the paper or something happened there, because it's the only spot it happens. Extra fine is the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 9 seconds to dry. Medium is much lighter than the extra fine, with no feather spread, halo sheen, a lot of very nice shading happening here. Starts dark, gets light in the brown, starts light, gets dark in fox, starts light, gets dark, light, and then dark again in jumps. A lot of very nice shading going on in the medium, 17 seconds to dry. Scrubby of the extra fine shows some color variation, and the scrubby of the medium shows us none, which is weird because that's totally backwards from what we got in the writing. Tomoe River. No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is the same tone as the stub. No feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 17 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine and the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 29 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation, and we don't get any. Rhodia. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 8 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, slightly lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, and 14 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both do show us some color variation, far left to far right, but it's really not coming through in the writing. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down, immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see this kind of gray-ish tone on the bottom that pushes its way up, and then we get our greens, and then a very dark blue. The one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And that grayish tone originally comes across as slightly purple. When we get to see it a little bit better with this chromatography, it still pushes up. We still get that very bright green and that very bright blue. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page and how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, this handles itself completely with respect. It stays at about an extra fine. It doesn't blow out or become unreadable. It makes me feel good using it in a note-taking situation. Water's lifting everything off the paper except that grayish purpley tone that we got in the second chromatography. It doesn't feel like it's really doing it. Now, Pen Flush did the same thing, but if you look at the bottom right area of where that pen flush was sitting, you start to see the white of the paper coming through, which makes me feel like given a little bit more time and a slight bit of elbow grease, the pen flush is all that you're going to need. 1/3 bleach solution completely removes it from the page, but isn't going to be needed to get this out of your pen. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Now I'm going to link a video where I show how I test it and how I calculate the data. Papier Plume's Forest Green has a viscosity of 1.49, making this a very wet ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those, and what I found is the average dry time is 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Papier Plume's Forest Green has an average dry time of 16 seconds, so despite it being very wet, its dry time is normal. Instead of finding inks that look like Papier Plume's Forest Green, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I wanted a nice brown and went with Diamine's Chocolate Brown. The second writing sample is done on Monocoque, Twisby, and Moji paper. Here we see Monocoque paper. Now we get no bleeding, but we do get some ghosting. It's a thinner paper. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer shading spots that are a little darker, like the K in quick, B in brown, the Y in lazy is a little bit lighter than the rest of the word. D in dog is a little bit darker. 6 seconds to dry. The medium is darker than the extra fine, a little bit darker even than the stub. It has no feather spread, halo sheen. It does again offer some spots of shading, like the BR in brown is darker than the rest of the word. The J in jumps is a little bit lighter than the rest of the word. So there are spots of shading that do occur. 10 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both far left to far right do show some color variation, and we are getting a little bit in this writing. How about Twisby notebooks? No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, and nice shading here. Quick starts dark, gets light, gets dark again. Brown starts dark and gets light. Over starts light and gets darker. Nice. 7 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, about the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. 12 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both do show us some color variation, although we're really not getting it in the medium, we do in the extra fine. Last up is Moji paper. With no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. 5 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, same tone as the stub. No feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. 8 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both does show us some color variations, far left to far right, but it's not coming through in the writing, and that is all that I have for the writing sample. So what do I think of Papier Plume's Forest Green? Now, this green is very ordinary as a green when it goes down. It doesn't offer the shading that I've come to really enjoy from green inks. Being so ordinary in how it looks and not having shading, using a fountain pen, I feel like you're missing out on something. It does put down a nice tone, but I'm just missing something with this ink. What nib and pen are going to give the best writing experience with this ink? If you want some shading, you really need to use a dry stub. That's your best chance, and that's the only time that I saw shading with this ink. If you've made it this far and you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I'm going to remind you to subscribe. Thanks for watching.